So with this, uh, my name is Nicholas Hewitt. I'm Strategy Director at Complete College America, and it is my pleasure today to be joined by Paul Timmins and Miranda Atkinson from the University of Oregon. Um, Very happy today. It is about career exploration and aligning with between career and academic advising. Just a quick word about the format of today's session. So we'll start with a quick PowerPoint presentation, followed by a discussion, and then a Q&A where we'll use your questions. So as I mentioned, please feel free to use the Q&A during the entire session. You don't have to wait till the end to post your questions, and we hopefully will be able to use your questions during the Q&A portion and during our conversation as well between Paul, Miranda, and myself. So with this, happy to yield the floor to Paul, who will be able to share his screen.
All right. Thank you very much, Nicholas. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. So my name is Paul Timmins, and I am the Executive Director of the University Career Center at the University of Oregon. And just what I'm going to do is I've got just a few slides that I want to go through in about the first 15 minutes or so of our time together. And then after that, we're going to have a conversation where I'll be joined by my colleague, Miranda Atkinson, and Nicholas will be back. And we'll kind of have a bit of a group conversation about everything that we cover here. As I mentioned, I work right now at the University of Oregon. Throughout my career, I have worked in basically public higher ed career centers. Worked at the University of Minnesota prior to coming here, and also at Indiana University. And I also was president of the National Career Development Association a couple of years ago. And I mentioned all of that because I feel like as I've gone through my career and as I've gotten to the spot where I am today, I'm convinced more and more about how essential it is for career readiness and career exploration to be embedded throughout the student experience in higher ed. I fear, too often, and there's still too many people in student services or in higher ed, and none of you on this call, but there are too many people who think of career centers as something that students should go to when they're a senior, they're getting ready to graduate. And I am convinced that what we really have to do, if we're going to really make a difference for our students, and especially some of our students that are most vulnerable and need our support the most, we have to come up with ways of building a career readiness culture and getting career readiness included throughout the student experience. And so for me, a couple of years ago, when I got connected to CCA and when I first met Nicholas and others in Complete College America, it's been really motivating for me because I feel like CCA and by extension, those of you on this call, you're folks who realize the importance the way that career exploration should be fit into the broader student success conversation. And so I really appreciate all of you on this call today. You're taking the time to be here to spend a little bit of time thinking about how career fits into student success and how having a better sense of why I'm in college can help students persist, graduate, and succeed. So in my first few minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about this notion of creating a career readiness culture. And as I do that, I do want to point out that I feel like the work that CCA has done, I suspect many of you are very familiar with their Purpose First project. And if not, I can't recommend it highly enough. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are the same concepts that are included in Purpose First. And so you can find that on the CCA website. It gives a lot of really strong strategies that all of us in higher ed can be thinking about as we help our students early on develop a sense of purpose and why they're in college so that they can be ready to go on and graduate and succeed. And I really do think that we have an imperative in front of us for doing this. It is critical that we're having this conversation and that we're bringing Career Center folks into these conversations about student success. A couple of years ago, Strada wrote a report that they titled Crisis of Confidence. Current college students do not feel prepared for the workforce. And it kind of goes through a lot of the points of, we know many of our students come to college, and it's like 60% of them will come to college saying they're there because they want to get a better job. Like, that's part of why they're enrolled. But in a national study, we found all sorts of, Strata found all sorts of results that are challenging for us. Now, not surprisingly, they found students who receive career support are the ones who do feel most prepared for the workforce. So that's good news, that if students are getting support, they feel prepared. But are they getting that support? I mean, nearly 4 in 10 students have never visited their school's career services office or never used online resources. And that includes more than 1/3 of seniors. So students too often aren't going into the Career Center. So are they getting help elsewhere? Not often enough, unfortunately. Students report that they do receive good advice from their advisors about courses and programs, but less so about careers and postgraduate options. And so that's a little bit about what Miranda and I will talk about, is how we bring advisors and other colleagues into this conversation about building a career readiness culture. And the last point that I pulled from that report, career services are particularly helpful for our underrepresented and our underserved student populations. We know we have students in college who are first generation or who don't bring the social capital with them, that they're looking to us to help give them a sense of what's possible, what they can aspire to. And so getting those students connected to conversations about career, whether that's in a career center or somewhere else, is essential. So we need to find ways of building equity by helping more of our students connect with career conversations. And as I mentioned, I've worked in career offices for a long time, and I know my own career offices, I'm sure, are no different than those on your own campuses. We're small, right? We're small but mighty. We're doing really good work, but we don't have a staff that's large enough to meet with every single student individually. We need allies across campus. And that's why it's critical that we build a career readiness ecosystem, as I call it here. And so today, what I want to just briefly introduce are 4 strategies that I've used in my own work, or I've seen others use, with building a career readiness ecosystem on my own campuses. And I'll be curious to hear your own thoughts on some of the ways we can either take these ideas or use others to increase the career readiness ecosystems on our own campuses. So first strategy, or first thing I would say, is absolutely, it's got to start at the top. We need our presidents, our provosts, our deans, our trustees to be clear with messaging and to have consistent, clear messaging that we push out to students, to faculty, to staff, to the whole community, letting everyone know that career readiness is the work of the entire campus. It's not just something that happens in the Career Center. This messaging, and as I think about it, and I'll share the example of what we've done at the University of Oregon in a minute here, but I think by being clear about putting this messaging out there, it reminds students that career readiness is just what we do. It is our promise to you that if you enroll at the University of Oregon, you will be career ready when you graduate. That is our promise to you. However, by being clear about it and consistent, and by putting that messaging out there, I also think it reminds students that we have expectations of them, right? There are things that we are going to ask you to do while you are here, because we're wanting you to build career readiness throughout your time in college. But I think having that messaging from the leadership in the institution matters. And so those of you on this call who are leaders in your own spaces, we need your help. We need your help with putting that clear, consistent messaging out there. And at Oregon, this is the way we do it. And I'm really proud of this. This happened. I've been here for about 2 years, and this was already in motion before I got here. So I didn't have a hand in writing this, but I love it. That we tell our staff and our students will graduate having had a positive experience, and they will be well-educated, socially responsible, and career ready. I love that when we share this definition, I've got the 2 words, career ready, right there in front of every student so that they know this is something that's our promise to you. And it's also something that brings with it expectations. So that's the first strategy, is that very clear, consistent messaging. A second one, and this is right out of the Purpose First document, if you've used that at all, career readiness work needs to start early. It's something that can't wait till the end. We need to help students appreciate that it's a priority, and so we're going to put it in front of them. We want students to envision what's possible. That whole purpose, purpose is about having a sense of the why. Why am I here? So we want to help students envision what they can aspire to. We want them to see the link between academics and career. That's why having conversations with academic advisors is so appropriate, right? As students are making academic choices, even from their first terms on campus, we want them to be thinking about career. We also want them to make data-informed decisions, learn more about who you are, what makes you unique, but also learn more about the world of work. What are our majors that we have here? Where are career opportunities that are out there? Where are growth areas? I mean, those are all types of questions that we can help students get better access to data, and that becomes so important as they make decisions. And I also feel like it is critical that career readiness work, as it starts early, it needs to be baked into our systems. So much of my own work is thinking in terms of systems. Like I want to see students one-on-one, and that's great. But if we can set up systems that are accessed by all students, right? All students, go through orientation. All students, in most cases, meet with an advisor at some point. All students are in classes. All these systems, if we can get career readiness in there, then it's no longer just something that the privileged students or the students in the know are accessing. It's something that every student can access. And I was very proud. This is my pictures here I took when I was at the University of Minnesota. So this is work that I did a few years ago. We had at our institution a first-year experience course that was an online class that all of our students took. They were all required to take. And it didn't include any career work at the beginning, but they found later on that students were asking about it. When they polled students, what do you want out of the FYE class? They increasingly were asking about, well, I want help with my resume, or I want help learning about careers that I can do. I was working in the College of Liberal Arts specifically. And so students were asking about that. And so what we were able to do was squeeze our career stuff into the existing first-year experience course. And even though it was an online course, we made our stuff in person. And so we, in our career center, we dropped everything we were doing for a week, and we had career week, where we had all 2,000 of our students were required to come into the Career Center. They had to go to our website, look at some material there. They came into the Career Center. We sort of made it like this carnival-like atmosphere. There's like a prize wheel over there. I forgot about that, but it made a lot of noise. I think we eventually got rid of the prize wheel because we got in trouble with other people in our building. But anyway, we had popcorn. There's people eating popcorn in the pictures there. So we were trying to make it fun for them to come in. But I would joke with the students as they came in that I wanted them to know essentially they weren't going to be able to avoid conversations about career. It was important that they started early, and we were going to put it in front of them frequently throughout their time. And so that was just our way of getting them going. We had every student write a resume. We had all of them initiate their handshake account, so they had to kind of get started learning about the systems that were there to support them. So starting early is the second strategy that I think is important. Third one is we want to help students identify the connection between what they learn and their future career. Those of you who are familiar with the work that NACE has done, I really embrace the work that NACE has done around career readiness competencies. They just revised their list of 8 competencies, and they had a webinar earlier this morning. And so there's going to be new material coming out. I mean, they're very similar to what the competencies were previously, but I'm embracing those on my own campus and wanting to use them as the common language that will help students understand, what they're learning in a political science class, or what they're learning at their part-time job, or what they're learning when they come to the Career Center. I want as much as possible to get faculty on board with using them. Right now, and I'll share an example of this in a minute, but I've got a faculty group that is pulling together resources. I want them calling out on their course syllabus, here are ways you are developing the leadership competency or the communications competency. I want that on the syllabus. I want that, maybe even in assignments. And so we've got a group of faculty that are trying to pull together examples of ways that they can highlight these competencies. And our hope is that we can get other faculty to pick them up later. So getting faculty involvement is critical. Faculty-led involvement is even better if we can find ways of doing that on our campus. And I feel like this appreciating of competencies is especially critical for liberal arts students, for whom major doesn't necessarily equal career, right? I mean, so the competencies give them a language to appreciate what they're learning. And I firmly believe, I'm someone who's worked with liberal arts students my whole career. I firmly believe that appreciating the competencies and the ways that they can transfer to new environments is what gives our students strength as they graduate into a very changing economy where the jobs of tomorrow haven't been invented yet. But I know the jobs of tomorrow will require the competencies that my students are developing today. So some of the ways that we are trying to put that in front of our students. On the left there, you see some of our graphics that we've created. So we've created little icons that our faculty members can download and put on their course syllabus. And we're going to be trying to roll out more branding across campus this fall, where we're going to let students know about how they're building these 8 competencies. On the lower right there is a little screenshot of the blog that our faculty members created. And I do have the URL for that underneath there. I mean, it's something that they'll keep building over time, but I love it. It's a way where we're trying to get faculty to bring their own examples of how they're bringing the competencies and career readiness into their own classes so that they can share that with their colleagues. And then on the top right there, I share an example of something that I just found really cool. And we asked Illinois if we could steal this and create our own campaign at the University of Oregon, and they graciously, of course, said yes. But what they did a couple of years ago is they created the Way You Say It campaign, which is a way of helping students think about, well, if I've been a barista in Starbucks, in the student union, how did I build competencies? Well, it's really the way that you say it. You know what you did. You can think about the strength of the work that you did, but competencies give you a language to use to translate it and to use it in your job interviews down the road. And so I just found that to be an especially powerful concept that we're hoping to use at Oregon at some point down the road as we try to help our students. But it's all about using this common language and getting students to experience it in a variety of places. And the last thing that I'll say before I bring Nicholas and Miranda back in is the 4th strategy is, I think it is critical that we find ways of integrating the work of career and academic advising. At the University of Oregon, we are trying to trying to be very intentional about this. I find it's first of all, at its heart, it's student-centric, right? Students are making academic and career choices in their head. I mean, they're making these together. And so by focusing on the student, what they need, it's a way of centering the student in our conversations about how we support them, integrating values, identities, skills, interests, the academic programs that we have available, all of that, bringing it together in one conversation. As much as possible, we want to get career assessment, and we want to get that to them early. And that's something we're working on at UO right now, is getting students to be thinking about career assessment early, do an interest inventory that helps you make academic and career choices. And you can talk about that with your academic advisor. And then just a point I always like to make, and I feel like this is my previous institutions. Sometimes this happened and I always tried to push back on it. I don't want the Career Center just to be another place on a list of a bunch of referrals that we refer some students to financial aid and some to the Career Center and some to, I want us to be integrated as much as possible into the work that our advisors do. And then I want my team in the Career Center to also be familiar with the work that is happening in our advising offices. And so at Oregon, what we have done, and I've got our duck here, and I've got my contact information on the screen, and also Miranda's, who's my colleague, who I'm going to bring back in a moment. What we have done is, and we moved into a new building a couple of years ago, which was a great opportunity for us. So we've got our advising unit that Miranda leads, our career center is there, and there's some other important units that are in the building, but it's worth noting that we're on a couple of floors like very close to each other. And we have tried to set up a system where the advisors take the lead on career exploration, right? I mean, from day one, when students come to campus, if they have questions about career and academic, those advisors are the experts on helping students with career exploration. And even so much so that if we get questions in the Career Center from students who are undecided and they're wanting to look around, we want to gently refer those students back to the advising office, because that should be the hub where students get support with career exploration. Whereas in the Career Center, we see ourselves as picking it up as students have some ideas about what they want to do, and we want to help them figure out how to get there, right? I want to help you learn about potential internships, learn about employers, write a resume, prepare to interview, all those sorts of things that are around what I loosely call career implementation, right? We specialize in that in the Career Center. So we have slightly different focuses in our two offices, but we want to have common training as much as possible on the things that are important to us. We want to have staff that are, clearly liaising with each other and finding ways of connecting. And so that's what we try to do in our joint work together, is make sure that our work is aligned and that our staff are familiar with each other's work, and that we can, kind of figure out how to align and connect what we are doing as we work with each other. And with that, I'm gonna stop my screen share, and I think we're gonna bring Miranda and Nicholas back in, and we wanted to just kind of keep talking about some of this work as we have blended our academic and career advising.
So, Miranda, thank you, by the way, Paul. I may have a neck ache after this. I've been nodding the entire time you've been talking about how, yes, it needs to have. Oh, that's a great idea. So, I may need an ice pack after this. But before we get started, I wonder, Miranda, would you mind introducing yourself first of all, and maybe talk a little bit more about your work at Oregon and Tykeson?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here. This is really exciting to get to speak to other folks who are really invested in and interested in exploring this work. As was mentioned earlier, my name is Miranda Atkinson, and I'm the acting director in Tykeson College and Career Advising, which is a mouthful. The unit that I'm helping to lead right now serves as the academic advising and career exploration home or resource for all students at the U of O who are exploring different majors and career options. And then we are also the academic advising and career home for students who end up declaring a particular major in the College of Arts and Sciences. And part of the reason I'm mentioning that is because there are other units on campus as well that provide academic and career support around professional schools, et cetera. So we kind of have a unique role. We serve all of campus and then also focus in on some specialization with students who end up really landing in the College of Arts and Sciences, which is our liberal arts school at the University of Oregon. Before I was in Tykeson College and Career Advising, I worked in the School of Journalism and Communication at the University of Oregon. I started there back in 2010. And Paul and I have had a different journey to this work. So I came into this field and this work through kind of the route of an academic advising. So I started out as an academic advisor, and I wasn't in the journalism school for too long before our director at the time, Sally Garner, proposed an idea, which at the time was pretty new. And the idea was, what if we make all of our advisors both academic and career advisors? And part of there are a couple of reasons behind that I think are important to call out. One was at the time that we did have a person in our unit who was a career advisor. And the academic advisors would refer to that person. That person's office was next to mine, was next to my director, Sally Garner's office. And still we saw so much attrition in that referral process. And so we realized, right, having these two next to each other was helpful, but it wasn't enough, right? It wasn't enough to help students really engage in that process. And so that's part of why we made the shift. The other key thing is that group of advisors, and I think many of us who work in advising kind of espouse the holistic advising philosophy or theory, right? That we work with students who are whole people. And in order to do the best job that we can supporting them and to really keep equity and social and racial justice in mind when we do our work supporting students, must consider all the pieces of their lives, right? And that means, I think that means that if you're doing holistic advising, you also have to be doing career advising, right? We can't essentially advise students holistically without also considering their career exploration and their career work. Anyway, so those were kind of the factors that went into that decision to integrate both of those in the School of Journalism and Communication. And here we are years later with kind of this approach being applied in another unit on campus and another pockets on campus as well. And so that's kind of my introduction and context right there. I can also speak, I think, a little bit to what it's looking like in Tykeson, and Paul touched on this already, right? Which is that we're working a lot together with the Career Center, right? We are next to each other, but we also work together a lot. We have kind of different teams within this larger unit that include staff from the Career Center, and they meet regularly and they talk together about what our goals are, what our philosophy is, what our approach is, how are we working together. We're on the same piece of technology system for even having student appointments, right? So there's the ability for an advisor in Tykeson College and Career Advising to help a student make an appointment with a career coach as a follow-up, right? It just makes that referral process a lot smoother and a lot more effective. So that's just, I think, a sample of some of the work that we're doing. And I could go on and on about this, but I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, but that's a little bit of context.
Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate that. And so I was wondering if you can, Paul, and you can talk a little bit about what does it look like, from a student's perspective, or just like in general, like, so when we talk about aligning academic and career advising, so what does it look like? What has gone well? And what, maybe talk a bit about the false starts or the challenges, because I'm sure that a lot of folks who are listening now is like, oh yeah, it's not that easy. Like, no, but it's obviously it can be done. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you went about it, or basically what it looks like right now.
Sure. I can start, and then Miranda can pick up. I think what I appreciate about it just increases the number. We've been able to dramatically increase the number of caring professionals on campus who can help start thinking about career early. So getting our advisors to kind of adopt this mindset of including career. I mean, I think they, as an advisor, you do that anyway. I mean, it's there, but we want to give our advisors additional tools and strategies for bringing that conversation up earlier and feeling empowered to do so, and feeling like, yeah, we need that expertise because we want students to get started early. Going back to my points I was making. So those advisors, have many more contacts with students than we ever have in the Career Center. So the more we can get advisors, thinking about career, talking with students about it, that just has a dramatic impact on the number of students who are challenged and asked to think about these issues. I think, from my perspective, and one of our challenges, and I think Miranda would agree with this, is that, we talk about it all the time, is kind of the gray area in between. Like when we talk about exploration happening, in the advising office and implementation happening in the Career Center, of course, all of us know that there's a lot of time where, a student's looking for an internship, but really they're looking for that internship because they're still undecided about their major and they need to talk to someone about potential majors or careers. And so there's gray area in between. And that's honestly, I think, something we have been working on and will continue to be working on, because it's not always as, every human being is complex. And so helping a student get to the place where they can be helped most effectively isn't always easy, and that's been one of our challenges. Miranda?
Thanks, Paul. I mean, I think one of the key things that we've kind of started off with is really wanting advising conversations with students to include career. And right, that sounds so simple, but it's really critical, right, that advisors find opportunities to bring career into the conversation. And that includes one-on-one advising, it includes programming, it college with a lot of narratives that aren't necessarily accurate around what career development looks like and how it happens. And those can connect to things like, oh, you wait to gain experience until you know what you want to do, right? But we know that having experience, all forms of experiential learning, can be a key tool for exploration. And the more experiences in general that a student can have during their time in college, the more likely they are to be career ready, right? And to be able to seek and be successful in pursuing the career outcomes and objectives that they're geared towards, right? So there's a lot of shifting that narrative and perspective for the students early on as they're coming in for advising. And I think part of why the integrated piece of it is so key, and Paul's referenced this, is that students do access advisors more often. Academic advising and planning is on a lot of campuses mandatory. On some maybe not mandatory, but really critical and just kind of more of a well-known entity, right? So students are going to encounter it. And that's so important because it means, right, that career development happens for all students. And I think that's essential for addressing issues of equity within higher education. If career development, career resources are just this tangential piece that students are referred to and told to access, right, when they have time, inevitably what we see transpire, right, is that students who are in the know or have the social and cultural capital to pursue those resources are the ones who do, and who do so earlier. And then we're just creating an increased equity gap, right, within this time that a student has in college. Instead, what we need to do is to support students in how they're accessing career resources and pursuing their career outcomes, their career development, to make sure that it truly is something that's accessible to students from a lens of equity and social and racial justice as well. So I'm going off here and also talking about why I think in particular the integration piece is so essential for our students, and it's part of why there's such an emphasis on just finding opportunities to talk to students about it in advising conversations and advising programming. Challenges, I think I agree with you, Paul, there. I think as many of us who do career work know, career development is not a linear process. I don't really know that it's a circle, right? It's more like a scribble, it goes all sorts of directions in all sorts of ways. So inevitably, when you try to divide pieces of it in whatever way that looks like, it doesn't quite work. And so there's always going to be some gray area. So, and we're navigating that. And I feel, I'm looking at Paul, I feel like we're doing pretty well, right? We talk about it, we communicate about it, we're figuring it out. And that's, I think, part of the challenging process. From an advising perspective, my experience doing this work in a different setting with a different structure over the years, I think applies here too. Career can be, when it's coupled with academic advising, kind of the thing that gets pushed to the side because there are other acute, things that come up, right? Needing to support students who are facing academic disqualification or academic standing challenges, right? Other initiatives that come into play, and right, curriculum changes and these sorts of things are kind of always immediate and acute. And of course they are, and they must be addressed, but it does take real effort and a systematic approach to make sure that the career work continues forward, and that it's not the thing that always does get pushed to the side in our want to make sure that students have what they need.
That's a good point. And by the way, thank you for bringing equity, because that was going to be one of my questions about like how that integration between career and academic advising is so crucial, especially for students who may not have the cultural capital. And I mean, I can, already coming in potentially with, imposter syndrome, is like, well, I'm not going to ask for help because I'm expected to know this. So by baking it into the cake, as Paul mentioned, into the experience, and everyone gets access to that. So I love that, and obviously I think that again, demystifying it and all that, I think that really helps. I was wondering if, because both of you mentioned the cross training aspect of it, and I was wondering if, because that to me that's an easy practice to replicate on your campus. That may not necessarily need a whole lot of resources other than volunteers to do that on your own campus. So who leads those training sessions, like between the different offices, or is it kind of I do one, on career, and then you're going to do one on advising, and vice versa? How does it work at your institution, or how would you recommend that it works?
Yeah, well, what we have done, and so Miranda mentioned, she's doing some in-depth training with the advising staff, and I'll let her talk more about that right in a moment. That really is just focused on her team. When we've done the joint training for everyone, those have been, it's essentially Miranda and myself and a couple of other key leaders in our offices. The four of us, we meet every couple of weeks, where we're, whether we're working on different initiatives or, comparing notes about how things are going or commiserating about how things are going, whatever the case might be. The four of us have just kind of generated our training topics there. And we've tried to think about what are some of the things that are, kind of go-to, quick things that are useful for advisors and my career readiness coaches in my office that we need to be ready to help students with. So for instance, Handshake is our job and internship database. And so we've done handshake training with the whole group because we want all of them familiar with how to refer students. So that's really just been a matter of the four of us as leaders trying to think about, what are some of the individual components that we want to make sure everyone has access to, and then finding the campus experts to bring them in as necessary.
Thank you. And Miranda, I didn't want to interrupt if you had, okay. So one of the questions that was asked was, we talk a lot about institutions being student ready, and I like how the question was sort of like, basically, I'll paraphrase. Are there any talks or discussions with employers to make sure that they are student ready or graduate ready, basically, as in like, how do we ensure that the competencies that we're providing through the academic experience actually prepares them, that they are aligned with the careers that the employers are? So I was wondering, like, what kind of conversation is ongoing, I guess, with employers?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I think, the first thing I would say is, and as I talk with people across campus about the competencies, they were developed by NACE very much in partnership with employers, right? I mean, this is what employers have said they are looking for. These are the concepts that are critical to success in a general employment setting. So that's kind of the first thing that I as I go across campus, I remind people that, these happen to look like the outcomes of a liberal education. And that's a happy coincidence because they're also what employers tell us they are looking for. What I do think, and as a part of this question, it wasn't asked directly, but it is also interesting for us to, have conversations with employers about, what are they doing to help students, help their new hires succeed? What are they doing to set a culture that helps students or new hires succeed? That's something that I think we talk with them. We talk with them about that in the Career Center. We're doing this tomorrow. I've been obsessed getting ready for this webinar, so I haven't thought enough about what I'm doing tomorrow. And that's the next thing. We're ready for that. But I have a student advisory board in my office. And what we are doing is we have invited employers as like an employer education session. We want these employers to come in and have a conversation with my students about that transition from college to career. And I would suspect this would be the type of question that will come up is, what are employers doing to cultivate the success of students as they come in, or particularly students from underrepresented or under-resourced backgrounds? What are we doing to help make sure that those students can find role models who've, traveled their path before, or who look like they do, or whatever aspect of it is important to the student, and to helping them see themselves succeed, get past that imposter syndrome and see themselves succeeding. And I think that's important for all of us in career centers to be engaging our employers in conversations about those sorts of things, so that we can help students make an informed choice about the organizations that they're looking at going into. So I don't know if that addressed the question head on, but I mean, those are some of the things that go through my brain as I think about that.
I guess the last question is so what does it look like your next steps? Like, obviously you're doing it, and I think that, uh, is it, well, I'm not going to speculate as to what the potential. So I'll leave it to you. So, what are the next steps for that integration between and alignment between academic and career advising here at Oregon?
You want to take this one?
Well, I mean, the one that comes to mind for me, and you may have others, is I think and some of it goes back to one of my points of having clear, consistent messaging out there in front of students. And so we have talked, Miranda and myself and some of our colleagues have talked about wanting to kind of have a much clearer kind of 4-year roadmap of these are the types of things that we want students to be thinking about as they go through the University of Oregon. And we've talked about that with our staffs already and kind of generated a lot of ideas. We want to figure out better ways of putting that in front of students. So, letting a student know, back to my joke earlier, they can't avoid us, right? We're going to be there asking them, hey, have you initiated your Handshake account? Have you done informational interviews? Have you looked at the internships that are available? Have you done research with a faculty member? They're all different ways that students, can kind of in a choose your own adventure format, pick up some of the career readiness experiences that I want them to get as they go through here. But we have to do a better job of communicating that to our students. So I think that's one next step.
I agree. I think that roadmap, if you will, identifies what actions we're all working together to support students and being able to pursue. So figuring out how to turn that document into a student-facing document, and then also to make sure that it doesn't become static, that it continues to be examined and evaluated. I think especially from an equity lens, we talk a lot about, all right, we're inviting students to engage in these particular career development actions, but how accessible are these? Who might this action exclude, right? And how can we make sure that we have diverse opportunities and actions listed for students to really make sure that we are not leaving out students with minoritized identities, first generation students, non-traditional students, and other student populations who are traditionally underserved. The other piece of it that I think is an important next step is, since we do work so closely with our liberal arts school and the College of Arts and Sciences, I think starting to really look at how can our career exploration work specialize within those particular majors and disciplines is really essential, because I think there are a lot of big myths that come in around career and pursuing a major in a liberal arts major, right? That it might not lead to a career. And we know that that's not true, right? And the NACE competencies can really help with that. But I think I'm excited for us doing some more work around specializing how we integrate career, particularly in support of that, of those students who pursue those majors.
Thank you. English major here, so I totally understand that there's definitely a need, because at least to share that, because I think that and to your point, Paul, about the competencies that are learned in liberal arts and humanities, I think are so easily transferable, and something that employers really wish for. So with that, thank you, both of you. I too would talk about this a lot longer. But we did promise folks that it's only 45 minutes or so, and we're about a minute late. So with this, thank you both of you. Just want to share again the next webinar that CCA is hosting is around course sharing and consortium that we are partnering with Acadium. So I strongly hope for you guys, that you can join us then. Space is limited, so and we've had already some folks register for it, so I strongly encourage. They're both the same, so you don't have to register for both. It's one or the other. Again, either on May 12th or the 13th, early in the morning or in the afternoon. So with this, I hope that you stay connected with us. Please make sure to stop by our website, where the recording and different resources that we talked about during the webinar will be available for you to peruse. And I also strongly encourage you to register for the next webinar that is, or the next CCA live webinar that's happening on May 20th on concurrent enrollment. So with this, make sure you follow us on social media and on our website. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon and hear more from you guys. Thank you. Have a great day.